Welcome everyone. Today is December 10th, 2020, and I'm Mike, and we have a spectacular Cyberpunk edition episode of our podcast today. Obviously something that we've been all looking forward to for a very long time. And I'm also here today with Brian.
That's right, it's Phoennix Nova from the Westbrook district of Night City with your Fashion Beat update. That's right, we're going to be talking about sneakers today. We've got these classic styles that are coming back. This is like 60 years old styles that are coming back here. These styles are coming back, and this is like, we haven't seen stuff like this since Johnny Silverhands has been around. Back to you, Mike.
Well, I appreciate that. Thanks for the update there in Night City. So, like I said, we are super excited about Cyberpunk. I hope you are as well.
I can't see through these.
And we're going to kind of jump right into our normal weekly update. So take it away. That's
right. We're here at Night City. We've been experiencing Night City. And so this time for Xycia's Cyberpunk 2077 weekly update.
So, as I said, it's finally here. It is December 10th, actually, today. We've been playing this. I've put in 7 hours myself. I know that Dymyrn has also put in probably more hours than that. I think Brian or Phoenix has probably put in about
somewhere
7
around
or 8.
19 or 20.
Oh, you were off today, too. Yeah, I was the only one that had to work today. I was the sucker that had to go in. But yeah, so...
no, I think I'm like 10 or 12.
Okay.
10 or 12.
So I got about 7 hours in, 10 to 12 there. I know Dymyrn's probably in the close 18 range, I would think, if not more. Because that's how it is. Unfortunately, Dymyrn's not going to be able to join us today on the podcast. He's having actually some technical issues, but we'll actually kind of discuss about some of those coming up here soon. So because this is a huge launch, it's a big game that a lot of people have been looking forward to, including us and a lot of people around the world. We're going to kind of cover this in different segments because there is a lot of things to talk about, and I want to make sure that we don't kind of get sidetracked with some of the conversations we want to have and such. So, but before I start, I do want to have a disclaimer. If you have not played Cyberpunk and you are not wanting to have any kind of spoilers, you may want to fast forward through this episode, probably about like at least an hour, I would think. Just because now I'm not going to say spoilers necessarily, but depending on what we talk about, maybe some spoilers to you because it's something that, you just haven't experienced yet. So with that, what were you going to say?
Absolutely. And, I don't think we're going to speak very much about things that are going to be spoiled, but yeah, absolutely. We could inadvertently drop some spoilers. I will try to preface anything that I say that it's a spoiler, and anything that is, and this is pretty much a spoiler, but anything that is within the first 30 minutes or so has been well documented out there. And yeah, you still might not have seen it, but we will probably talk about that stuff extensively.
Yeah. So as I said, we'll kind of go in segments. We're going to talk about first impressions of how we feel about the game, how that worked out for us. We're going to talk about some patchwork and also some bugs that we've been covering and also experiencing ourselves, along with differences in platforms. So whether it's PC, Xbox, or PS5 or Xbox One or Series X or whatever people may have at this point. And then at the
differences in controllers,
and then we'll have one unique kind of spoiler towards the end, which we'll definitely tell you before we get there. But it's not like it's not a story spoiler. It's more of just a Easter egg kind of thing. So yeah, I guess first impressions. Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go?
Take it off.
All right, cool. So I did talk about having the rule books and everything, the core books from Cyberpunk 2020 and also Cyberpunk Red, which is somewhere in between 2020 and 2077. I was going to try to kind of relate some of this stuff together if I could, or maybe even talk about similarities and things. I think I'm going to actually probably break this out into a video series that I'll probably cover, maybe cut the first video this week. Just on some differences. But one of the core things that I was looking for initially was the character building. And as you said, like the first 30 minutes is really going to be you just kind of building your character. This is one of the most detailed and most, like, I guess, descriptive ways of designing your characters that I've seen in the game. I've seen there's a lot of different ways you can design your character, and I'll leave it at that, really. But there is just some options.
Well, okay, so since you bring that up, I mean, because let's talk about one topic at a time, and not just monologue. There's a lot of things you can do with your character. It is not the most detailed character generator I've seen. It's very much of like, here's the faces. It does a little bit of like the mouth and the nose and like the chins and stuff like that. But it's more of like, oh, here's the different chins, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, as opposed to the ones that like, oh, here's your nose and here's the sliders for like the width of the bridge and the depth of the bridge and how far the nose sticks out and how far the nose like points up or points down and how far the nostrils are wide. It doesn't go to that.
Yeah,
detail.
and I guess you're right on that. I mean, it's definitely not to that level. I guess when you say that, I think even like Fallout 4.
And I don't need it to that. I don't need it to that detail. I think it's detailed enough. I think there's a lot of variety. I hit the random button a whole bunch. And, like, it was fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's more like the Fallout 4 has like a lot more, I guess, with like detailed work, I guess you could say. I guess the main thing was
a lot of the Bethesda.
The amount of options you had in each category, like the 1 through, like I think it was like 31 on some of those, and then some of the other things. Spoiler is the genitalia, which we talked about in the past, is having the option to whether you pick to have a penis or you pick to have a vagina or pick to not have either, and that's like at the Barbie style.
Well, not either. I mean, it was also like they showed underwear. So it was like, if you didn't want to be exposed to it as it were, you could turn the genitalia off. But I also do appreciate that they didn't go into like this binary gender world. You literally can create a woman, have breasts, which, and again, they do a little bit of sizing on them, but it's also not sliders. It's just, like choice between, I think, 2 or 3 different ones. But you can give her a penis.
You sure could. And it also flops around a little bit when you select the different types, which was interesting. Anyway.
Yeah, because there's like, again, everybody's talking about like sliders for size. It doesn't have that. I think it's got like
it was like 2 different types, like either small or big,
and
it was interesting.
Yeah.
The reason I bring this up,
I'd say average in big.
Yeah. The reason I bring this up is because one of the core things I was looking for was character creation in the sense of like tabletop, where you're actually rolling dice to see if you're building your character the way you want to build it and assigning points that way. One thing I noticed that is the point buy system in this game doesn't really relate to the tabletop version at all, which I'm not saying it's supposed to. I was just curious to see if they would. So the point buy system is a little odd. It's like it goes down, the lowest you can be is 3, the highest you can be at 6, and then you only have 6 points you can spend between like 5 or 6 different categories. So it wasn't really friendly to be able to roll the dice for. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that. But I mean, besides that, my first impression overall, it's
definitely a common thing that video games do to get around that.
Yeah.
With bringing a tabletop RPG to a video game.
Yeah.
So I wasn't too surprised, but yeah, I can see why you would have some disappointment.
So the overall impression I had from the game, like I said, I've played about 7 hours in. I've noticed, and I also picked the Corpo life path. Brian or Phoenix has picked the Nomad, and Dymyrn has picked the Street Kid. So I've been playing the Corpo, and we kind of played together. We talked about a little bit of the stuff together while we were playing the other night. But ultimately, I haven't really experienced... well, let me back up. We'll talk about that later. I really enjoy the storyline so far. It does captivate you in a sense of, I feel like I'm playing a movie. I feel like the music and the sounds, the score almost is really well done, to where when you kind of come into certain battles or things start getting intense, like you kind of feel like shit has to happen right now, because if not, like this could go really bad. And I've really felt that. Outside of that, I really haven't explored a whole lot of the city yet. I have walked through different parts of the city, which I think are interesting, but I haven't really gone out there and really just hit the street and kind of did my side quest kind of things. I've been mostly, or not even side quests, just kind of like exploring. I've been kind of sitting most on the actual missions and going forth with those. And I've been having a blast with them so far. The one thing that I did point out is the music. And the option we talked about before was the DMCA option, to where you can do non-copyrighted music for streaming. And I'm actually super impressed with that, because even the radio stations with that have really good music, even though they're not like actual copyrighted artists. What?
Well, okay, yeah, they do have good music. I agree with that. And they had a lot of it was written for the game.
Yeah.
Especially for what was the band?
Refuse. Yeah. What? Refuse does the Samurais,
because they actually, they did Samurai, the band, and they did a whole album of music basically. But interestingly enough, and I didn't find a news story on this, but it was something that I heard. Interestingly enough, even if you're playing on DMCA mode, they had one song that they didn't flag for their DMCA mode, so it still plays, that's getting kicked for DMCA.
Sick. Well, I'm glad that Twitch is doing their job, which we'll talk about again later, as well as another story.
Yeah, and it actually is licensed music, so it should be caught by DMCA. It's CD Projekt Red, from my understanding, just forgot to add it to the list.
Gotcha. But yeah, ultimately, overall, like I said, for 7 hours in, I finally got to the title screen. So it does take 7 hours roughly to get to the title screen if you play through just the actual story mode, which was impressive because I felt like I've done a lot. But I think the game's only like rated to be like 25 hours long anyway. So kind of interesting there that's how far into the game you have to get before you get going, I guess.
It's 20 to 25 hours if you just mainline.
Yeah. Just the storyline.
You like, and don't do side quests. And
right.
There's 100+ hours of content here.
So that's pretty much my first impressions. I've really enjoyed it. I think overall, we'll talk about it. There are some bugs. I haven't experienced a whole lot of bugs myself, but ultimately, some of the other ones may have different opinions. But I think ultimately the game is still more entertaining than it is affecting me. And the game overall, the bugs aren't really game related bugs to me. Like it doesn't affect my gameplay in a sense of like I really can't progress through a wall or something because like something's in my way or some craziness like that. So what's your first impression?
I enjoy it. I'm having fun. I have concerns. I'm having fun, but I have concerns. There's just a couple odd things. And some of it is like the physics doesn't bother me. Open world physics is there's gonna be like, always that like glass bottle that's going off to the side, whatever. That happens in all of these games. Whatever. And I haven't seen too much of that. Again, every now and then. When the characters ragdoll after you shoot them and like they clip halfway through something, whatever. I mean, again, that's open world games and physics are extremely difficult to do. So that doesn't bother me. However, there are some things that are weird. Like you're looking at the weapons in your backpack and you're like, oh, I like this weapon here. So I want to equip it as one of my 3 equipped weapons, right? So you click on it to equip it, and it brings up this little menu that has your 3 equipped weapons on it. And as you hover over it, it then includes it with a comparison between the 2 weapons, the equipped weapon and the one that you're about to equip. And it's directly over that menu of where you need to click to equip it.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, so I wanted it in the second slot. So that was about here. And you click that and it puts in the first slot. And I tried it 5 times. I was like dead certain that my cursor was low enough to hit the second one. And it put in the first slot. It put in the third slot just fine. And so it was really weird that it's like, okay, it's got this menu that you're supposed to select which slot to put it in, but immediately covers it up with the descriptions of both weapons side by side, completely including the menu. And I was like, how'd that get by QA? Because
yeah, well, let's talk about that stuff in a little later. That's
weird, but yeah, it's true. You got patches and bugs coming up. I'll save some of that. And this other thing really isn't bug. This thing is a concern with my first impressions, which is some of the voice acting. The voice acting is fairly decent so far. It's not great. It's not bad, but the way they do their dialogue trees doesn't seem good at all. First of all, either I'm dumb or there's no way to exit a dialogue tree besides walking away from someone, which seems bizarre to me. I have had several dialogue trees that are like, they just go back and I'm like, done. Like, yes, the story ones, they go step by step and it's fine. But I mean, just when you're talking to some of the shopkeepers and stuff like that, the dialogue tree just stays up until you walk away from them.
Yeah,
and
I've seen that as well.
Yeah, and worse is that if you talk to someone on a dialogue tree, it's not actually a tree. Again, outside of like the main story missions, I've had some of the side quests and some of the shopkeeper stuff where I did one of the alternate things that I could talk to them about. It's like, oh, what happened to your husband? Oh, he was killed in the corporate wars, blah, 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 blah. And then I'm like, okay, I got this interesting little side bit of information. That's cool, right? And then I went back up to the main conversation and clicked on it. And they said, oh, yeah, so let me take you over here. Don't worry about that. That's for my husband. He was killed in the corporate wars. And I was like, but you just told me that they didn't even record a separate line of dialogue for the fact that you had talked to them about this already.
Right. Yeah, I've kind of experienced some of that as well on different dialogues. I know what you're saying.
Now, with that said, I mean, they recorded a boatload of dialogue and they recorded it in 8 or 10 different languages. Yeah. So I'm not going to complain too much. But yeah, I mean, I'm having fun. I just had some concerns and I'm wondering how much that's going to go through. Like, I'm seeing that in the first, prologue area. Granted, the prologue is 7 hours long. But, if I'm seeing it now during the prologue area, how much am I going to see that later? So,
yeah.
But yeah, patches and bugs, which I kind of already touched on.
Well, hold on. So our first impressions are also not the only first impressions. Obviously, they're doing something on the initial. So they actually broke records, as we all kind of expected. It wasn't anything that we didn't kind of already expect. But they already surpassed 1 million concurrent users on launch day last night as of 7 p.m. When they launched. And that's, I think, was from Steam, I think is what they reported that on. So that's not even including GOG, which is CD Projekt Red's launcher, along with wherever else people are buying a game from. So super crazy. It's because I think before that was the new WoW patch. I think they had a bunch of different people playing at the same time. And it was like breaking records, and now all of a sudden this is kind of broken more records. So I mean, as with like any big movie release, that kind of stuff happens as new movies come out.
It was noticeable. It was noticeable because 7 p.m. last night was when you were supposed to be able to play. And we tried to play at 7 p.m. And it was like 5-10 minutes afterwards. It was still saying, go back to sleep, samurai. Yeah. It's not time to play this yet. And then it acted like it was going to load a patch, and it didn't. And then it started loading a patch. So it was clear that millions of people were all trying to play this at the same time. Trying to hit the same server
to get the same download. But yeah, rolling into patches and bugs. I mean, the day one patch.
Oh, wait.
Go ahead.
Did you talk about your key bindings?
No, I'm going to put that into the next part. But okay. Yeah, so basically patches and bugs. The first day one patch was only I think it was 430 megs or something, 43 megs. I don't know, something.
There were a couple of them.
Very substantial, but it did take us probably about 10 minutes or so after 7 to really get the game going. And like I said, I kind of expected that with everybody trying to click play at the same time. Even though this isn't a multiplayer game, we're still having to hit the same servers to download the same patch. Ultimately,
there was an earlier one earlier in the day, so it was a day one patch, but it was before the launch time. And it was a multi-gig patch. And I think that's where they brought most of it down. And then the last patch, right as we launched, was 200 meg. Yeah. It was super small and fast.
Yeah. Probably just the unlocking the game, probably patch or something.
Yeah. The last executable.
Yeah. The biggest issue that I have with this game, and don't get me wrong, like I said, I'm having fun. I'm still able to play the game. But the biggest problem that I have personally is I'm a left-handed player. I play keyboard and mouse typically, and I'm left-handed. I use my left hand on the mouse. My right hand is where it gets weird. Usually most people would still play WASD with the right hand, and they'll just live in the right-hand world, which I don't do that. I break out of the bars, and I have to be outside the box. Literally to the fact where my right hand sits on the keypad, and I've probably talked about this before, but technically, like, my right hand lays on the keypad on the right side. So for me to move forward, I press 8 or up. I press the 5 to go down or like backwards, 4 and 6 to go left and right. And then out of that,
yeah, numpad's pretty common for left-handers.
Okay,
it's not all that weird.
So with that, I mean, all the other buttons, like your 7, your 3, your 1, all of those other extra buttons I use, like even like page down, I use my reload. It's all kinds of different things that I get to map around there because there's a bunch of buttons I can use. And so, of course, the first thing I do every time I launch a game, and if you've watched some of the streaming that I've done, is, all right, let me check the settings. Let me go to Keybindings, and I start having to go through my Keybindings because I have to do this on every game. And so I went through, I did everything, and I was like, all right, cool, we're set up, we're good to go. I start the game, I walk up to the first door I have, and it says, press F to open the door. And at that point, I should have just pressed F to pay respects, because the point was it was broken. Like, I could not open the door unless I pressed the F key, which, if like you understand what I'm saying as far as my layout, that means I have to either do one of two things. Either take my hand off the mouse, which does my movement of my head, so then I can't do that while I'm pushing the button, or I have to take my hand off movement, so then I can't move around and just move my head while I'm doing the action. So it almost disables me in the sense of like a few seconds, especially as I keep progressing. And it's not just the doors, anything that I had to interact with, whether it be a door, picking up items off the ground, picking up ammo while you're in the middle of a firefight, all of these things I had to use the F key to press to pick it up. So I had to constantly like disable myself to do that. And the best part about it is that these key bindings don't exist in the menu options. Those menu options do not the mappings do not exist for those keys. And they're not the only ones.
No, I mean map. Because that was,
right.
one of the other ones. Like bringing up the map,
right,
which is going to be a frequent thing when you have and let me backtrack really quick to first impressions, because I forgot to say this. This is GTA 2077.
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't. Depends on what you're meaning by that.
You have a wanted level when you piss off the cops.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the similarities, and in a game that's an open world sandbox in a human society, I would think
doing heists.
I would think that's,
you are legit doing heists like GTA 5.
Similar. I wouldn't. And we talked about this the other day. I think
you're hanging out the window of your car shooting at people.
Yeah, I think when you say that to me, though, I think of GTA being more arcade style, where everything is still kind of not real. And I feel like Cyberpunk is a little more realistic. Even the driving is one of the things that I've noticed that seems more realistic in the sense of like, stopping and going and things like that. So I get what you're saying. Open world sandbox. There's still a bunch of like society level things that are happening. I get that.
I think the driving is pretty close to GTA 5, actually.
I don't agree with that. I think the driving is more related to more of like a driving simulator. Like I feel like it's more.
Oh God, no.
Yeah, I do agree with that.
The car was so squirrely when it hit 70 miles an hour. 70 miles an hour
so
in my
fast
car.
In the city?
70 miles an hour, and I barely touch anything, and it's going over like a little bump in the road, and all of a sudden I'm 90 degrees and slamming it aside. Oh my God, the driving really reminds me of GTA 5.
See, I don't
mean,
see
it's
that,
not
but
bad, and I know, and there's certain cars that do drive better than others, and we did go different life paths, so we might have different cars.
Yeah,
I got a Hella something.
I don't even know what the name of it is. I've only used it a few times because I will say, the times that I have been outside of missions and actually just walking around, I tend to walk because there's just so much to look at and to see and hear that I haven't really spent a lot of time sitting in my car driving.
Yeah. But still, GTA 2077.
Yeah.
With a lot of, modernization and tightening some things up. And yeah, when you have a game like that, you're going to be going in your map in and out a lot. Either, selecting a mission because it will do just like GTA and some of those, it'll do little dots on the mini map of where you're supposed to drive and everything to get to your next mission. And Xycia couldn't find a key binding for map.
Yeah, and that doesn't stop there. It's not just the pressing the door to open the door. It's not just the map. It's the inventory. It's the character, the skill points, all of the things that you typically would need to see or do doesn't exist. Like you have to use the key bindings that are not explained to you because they're not even an option to explain to you that's what it is. But like I for inventory,
and it goes,
J for journal, things like that, M for map.
Yeah. And it goes even deeper because it's like they were creating this game and they couldn't decide whether they wanted you to control it by keyboard and mouse or by controller. And yes, we're going to say differences between platforms. We'll talk about that later. But I just want to say really quick that there's a menu for selecting your weapon or putting your weapon away.
Yep.
Now, when I use that on controller, it pops up in a circle and I just put in my joystick to the direction I wanted to. And I selected that and hit OK. And then I was playing it with keyboard and mouse today. You move up and down on the mouse to rotate it around. And it was such a pain in the ass.
Well, let's back it up.
To get it to the right place.
That doesn't even tell you how to bring that dial up. That was another issue we had because you have to hold on. Yeah, me and Dymyrn were walking around the city going like, hey, can we holster our weapon? Because I don't want to walk around with just a gun hanging out the whole time. It seems weird,
Yeah.
So he's like, oh yeah, Brian's playing with the actual controller. And he's like, yeah, you just do this thing. And we're like, well, we don't do that on the keyboard and mouse. So what button is that? And he's like, oh, I don't know, I'm hitting this button. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. So I just started clicking all kinds of stuff. And then all of a sudden this pop-up came up when I hit Alt. And it was like, oh, there's a wheel that I can holster my weapon. And I'm like, well, that's odd. Like, this isn't explained at all. It just there's a lot of things.
The fact that menu 100% was meant to be used with a controller.
Yeah, for sure.
And the driving is significantly better with a controller. But I mean, that's most of the games like this.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't expect to drive with the key. I am driving with the keyboard. I did.
It's not good.
I did play with the controller today as well. And because of my key binding issues, it seems it's going to be my only real outlet at this time. The only problem that sucks is it's the best of both worlds, right? So I'm going to have to do the hybrid. I'm going to drive with the controller and do what I need to do. And then when I want to fight and actually walk around, I'm going to use the keyboard and mouse because that's the only way for me to get the full experience.
I mean, back to kind of what I said, it's like they designed this thing to be used with both, which is bizarre. But I think we've got the next most important thing about this too with patches and bugs.
Well,
which similar to left-handed is an accessibility issue.
So disclaimer, and this may be a spoiler, and this is something that you have seen if you've been watching the Night City Wire. They actually did like a 20-minute video clip of like a certain part of the game, and it is a part of the game that's like it's going to be something that you're going to be doing a lot of. It's one of that like the cyber sides of the game, and it's called a brain dance. And what it is it's a simulation of like a previous experience that someone lived. That since everybody has like these cybernetics that are in them, they are recording everything.
It records information,
so you can basically see other people's point of view of what they were doing when they did a certain thing. But on top of that, if there's any kind of cameras or any type of anything around there, all of that footage and all of that is able to be accessed while you're watching this brain dance. So like you can literally like have an out of body experience, like watching like you see first person as like this person doing something, but then you can like zoom out of the body and actually see around the person stuff that they're not even aware of. But
yeah, and some of it goes by the concept of like these cybernetic implants are recording everything that comes into the eyes, everything that comes from the ears, and those ears and eyes might be augmented themselves, but the human brain behind it still can only pay attention to so much of that information at the time. However, the cybernetics are recording all the information that's coming in. So they didn't pay attention to the fact that someone was having a conversation over here, but their ears still heard it.
Yeah. And like I said, not to get too much in the brain dance side, because I mean I don't want to spoil anything with that, but the it is something you're going to be using throughout the game, and it does seem very interesting, which is something that I'm looking forward to in the future of like during the game, like using that feature. But the biggest thing about it is when you go to use this is you put on this like headset essentially with the little visors in the front, which I know that Brian would love to tell you what they look like, but they look like what?
Well, interestingly enough, they have a grid of LEDs on both sides that start flashing white and then even red, which is almost identical to the exact device that scientists use to trigger epileptic seizures in order to be able to test things that are supposed to prevent epileptic seizures. It looks near identical.
So the problem with that is, I mean, there's always games that have those warning messages that tell you, hey, you probably shouldn't play this game because it's going to screw with you. And people who, obviously have those have an ability to have seizures like that they know those things and they go, oh, okay, I'm out of here. The problem with this is they didn't have a disclaimer at the beginning of this game to let you know that this was a problem until people started.
I mean, they did. It was buried in the EULA.
Right, but it's not at the beginning of the game like you're going to look at when you're, doing that. So the other thing too is I don't have any issues with epileptic seizures, thank God. But I will say doing this scene, even, and I've talked to a couple other people who played it, I still kind of had to close my eyes and look away because the lights are so intense. I mean, you're probably in a dark room and the screen goes white, like it's completely white. And I will say, and flashing. And I mean, it was intense. Like I even had to kind of look away at times. And I even after I stopped playing last night, like my eyes hurt from, and it's not just this part, from like the whole game. Like there's so much going on. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing at all. Like this is very cool, very immersive in the sense of the brain dance thing. I get that. It's just, disclaimer part we need to talk about. But the like all of it is so good, but so like pretty. Depending on what you're playing on, but at least on my PC, it seems very pretty. But it really hurt my eyes because there's motion blur, there's different lighting, like these different God rays things coming through. Like it's just very intense.
And the movement's off.
Yeah,
the movement is off. I'm not a fan of it. It seems too smooth when you're moving. It's like you're constantly doing a ninja walk. Again, it's kind of my first impressions. Like I'm used to like a little bit of a bob, and this is just like
it's very glidey. Yeah, I can see that. I see what you're saying. But again, I don't have a problem with that. That doesn't bother me. It's more of just the fact that like it does hurt my eyes. There's like I had to take a break. Like I literally stopped early because I needed to stop.
This is not a new thing. They've known between anime and games and everything. This is a well-known thing that if you flash things on the screen, you can cause an epileptic seizure. And they knew enough to put it in the EULA, but they didn't put a good warning on the screen. It was until today. It was today, and granted, today is technically the release date. They did it early. They did it midnight on GMT, so it was 7 p.m. Eastern. That we were able to play it, or they released it at the same time worldwide. So yes, they did get it in by launch day, but they put in a warning, and it was so innocuous and hard to see that Xycia played today and didn't see the warning.
Didn't see it. I knew it was happening. I knew they were going to do it
on screen for 3 seconds. You can't read the whole thing. And I was even trying to read it again to see if they specifically called out the brain dance section. Because here's the thing. The whole game doesn't cause epileptic seizures. It's primarily this section. And there's some other parts that might cause some issues as well. They literally gave a reviewer of the game a grand mal a seizure.
Wow.
One of the reviewers had a seizure doing this.
That's crazy.
Because they can't bother to put a warning on something that they damn well know that they should put out there.
I mean, I think it's almost like someone dropped the ball and then the ball kept being dropped. Like the teams didn't catch it. And because I mean, obviously they're going to do that. Like that's something that you have to do. Like it's, that is a no brainer, right? Like you typically would do that.
And the thing is it's not just this, because again, this is accessibility issues. And this is something that, accessibility to games is something that Xycia holds dear. I agree with him, and I have helped support him on this as well, because he had a stream where he picked up donations. I personally donated to this for able gamers to like help with stuff like this. It's not just the seizure part of it. It's that they have a colorblind mode, and apparently their colorblind mode is bad, to put it politely.
Yeah.
I have listened to at least 2 different people that are games journalists. They're in the industry. They talked on their podcasts, for lack of a better term, podcasts and other venues that they have to get their voices out through games journalists, and they're colorblind. And they put on the colorblind mode, and the game itself is bad for colorblindness. I've even had where I've had, because you can, in the map, you can select, oh, here's the mission I want to go to, and here's a waypoint that I want to go to. And it does 2 different set of dotted trails while you're driving along. I've literally, myself, not being colorblind, gotten to the point where I can't tell the trails apart because they're so close in color. One's a light yellow and the other one's a white.
Wow.
And so the game itself isn't good for color blindness. And then the colorblind mode, apparently from these people who are colorblind, they're like, no, it's trash. They opted to play in normal mode because the colorblind mode was so bad.
Wow. So that's kind of like one of the major issues. Like that's it could be a game breaking issue depending on, and potentially, mentally like damaging you, like physically damaging you kind of thing. If it's something that, if it's related to the seizure side, but the other things that are really been kind of addressed with a lot of people having disconcern about is the fact that the performance of these games, and I'm talking about PC. I'm sticking straightly to PC at this point. But the performance for this game,
freaking green,
is basically
green.
Bad. Like the optimization is almost pretty bad on this. So we talked about last week that Tom's Hardware actually did like a review and stress test everything to see what kind of cards would be able to run this game and at what level and everything. They mentioned the RTX 2060 should be able to play this on Ultra, no problem. And then the GTX 2080 should be about Super Ultra comparison. I have a GTX 2060, and I played this when I started the game. I just launched it in whatever they told me to play. It said it was at high, not Ultra, so I didn't slide it out. I just left it at high. The only thing I think I tweaked was like the resolution initially. I think I had to set it to like 144, but or 250, whatever. But anyway, so I did that, and that was about it. And I started playing, and depending on the situation that I was in, the game definitely had moments to where my FPS. So I will say my FPS was really never over like 35, like total, probably never over 35. Usually sat between 20 to 30. And then depending on how much was going on, like firefights, if I was in a large crowd outside or something, it would even dip down to like 14 at times. It really just depends on what you're doing. So that was kind of like, what? That doesn't seem right. I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong. I am streaming at this time. So I'm using my GPU and my processor to do different encoding. I'm also, sending this on the internet, and it's using my processing and stuff. So there's a lot of other things going on that are using my machine. But ultimately, like I've been playing other games that are like even on Ultra and things, and it are fine. I mean, I've been playing Far Cry 5, and that's been pretty fantastic on stream. So it's, I don't really know. I
mean, granted, Far Cry 5 was released a year ago.
Yeah, it's not super
it is
old.
An older game.
Yeah.
I'm in a different situation because I was playing on a laptop with a 1070, right? And one of the big things with NVIDIA that they said that a lot of people complained about was that going from the 10s to the 20s was pretty much only adding the ray tracing, and there wasn't that much of a jump in performance. So a 1070 being not in theory, too different from a 2070, except for the 2070 has ray tracing and a bit of performance bump. But I was playing on this laptop, and that then went to my secondary computer for streaming out. So it was dedicated to playing the game. And I thought it was passable. So I was probably in the 30s, give or take, until I did an update today, like the game updated today, and all of a sudden it dipped to 12.
Oof.
Like it was not butter smooth when I was doing my stream. And each of us have got our streams out there. Each of us did the different life paths, so it's fun to watch the different streams. You can go out and see my stream. It wasn't butter smooth, but it wasn't hitching.
Yeah.
It wasn't crazy. And I played it again this morning. It was fine. And then it updated sometime in the afternoon. And all of a sudden, I'm walking around with 12 and 15 FPS. And I was like, it's the same laptop. I haven't changed anything.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too, is I also upgraded my, or updated my drivers for my card, which I know a lot of people were like, why did you do that? You're crazy. You're not going to play anything. You're going to crash. And
I had to do it with my Radeon.
Yeah.
On my main computer with my Radeon, it literally would crash until I updated my
and
drivers.
they literally had a Cyberpunk update, like driver update is what they said. They were ready for the game. Like we can launch it, no problem. So I did that. Another thing that people were talking about that were having issues was that there was a certain part, anytime that you get around a mirror, when your character can look in the mirror to see his reflection, there was early reports of people's games completely crashing, just completely. As soon as you go to that scene, it just crashes your computer.
Dicks.
And I didn't get to that part, but what I got is the frame rate lowered like by a lot. I mean, it would go from like 30 to like 5 to 7 almost at times. Like it would be really bad. And then once you see yourself,
yeah, I heard that was pretty common.
Yeah, even the reflection, it doesn't even look the same. Like I don't know what the technology they're using there for the graphics to do a reflection, but it definitely is taxing the shit out of your PC. And
and people were saying that they would be missing their hair, or they'd be missing their hair in their hat they were wearing, or like some people were like, I'm completely naked. It was really weird. There's huge bugs around the mirror.
Yeah, so
and this is specifically while you're in your apartment and you go up to this particular mirror. It is specifically put in there for you to go up and look at your character, because you play first person. People laughed at me. Xycia and Dymyrn laughed at me. So I said, pay particular attention to your nails on your hand, because you're going to be seeing the nails on your hand a lot during the game, because that's really only all you see, because it's first person. Now, I played a female character, so I got to play a little bit more with my nails, and they're like really pretty and multicolored, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what those guys did, but
I picked white.
Yeah, it's first person. The only time you really are seeing yourself is in the character screen, which is a lower res rendition, or in this mirror, which is supposed to be the high res, like here I am and bam. I guess photo mode too, but we haven't played with photo mode. At least I haven't.
I haven't yet either. Like I said, I've been kind of busy doing other stuff, but so
I'd say photo mode's probably the other place. I would be curious if photo mode has a similar dip.
So the other part, kind of going back from that, because like those are some experiences that we've had, is so there's actually, and this is unfortunately I mentioned earlier, Dymyrn's not here, but it's also part of kind of this issue. So he has a 3080, which is he's a bastard for having one, because he was one of the few people that I know that actually got one. But he has
don't start that, because some of us also have consoles that other people have.
That's true. That's true.
So.
But I don't care about the console ones. But anyway, so he has a 3080 and he was playing this today or playing last night and today. And then his motherboard had some major issues, and he's basically rebuilt his computer right now, which is crazy. But unfortunately, that's what happened. But there was an article that was written, a person who did like a kind of stress test to this, and they found out that even with 3090s, like the brand new 3090, like the top dog, like I have a lot of money and just want to spend it on a card, and I do that. They are even getting
the biggest dick in the locker room.
They are even getting 22 FPS on average. So with that being said, Dymyrn started doing stress testing on his own machine, because he felt like with the 3080 he should be getting a better performance. And he has a Ryzen 7. I think he has a 2800 like I do. I think he has a 3080. I think he has like 32, maybe 64. I'm not sure RAM. And I don't know what motherboard he has, but he has a good machine. Like it's definitely, yeah, it's up there. And even with him, he was still getting like under 30, like I was getting. And even with all the stress tests he did, he said he like went through, started adjusting the settings, trying to put ray tracing on, ray tracing off, and all of that. Nothing really made a difference with the actual the FPS of the game. And with another article, people were doing the same thing. They were doing a lot of stress testing, and it didn't even seem like the sliders or anything that they were doing for like the actual performance were even making any difference. Like it literally wasn't changing anything. And that's unfortunate. It seems like the game is definitely not optimized at this point. And it's you know, in the state they're playing in. Like I said, I'm nitpicking. I'm definitely up. You know, there's certain things I want to talk about, and I want to give you kind of like an honest review of how I feel. But ultimately,
I don't think that's nitpicking.
Well, on certain things, not necessarily this, but
the fact that the brand new, latest, biggest, baddest, like bully on the freaking playground,
right? Like I said, not necessarily
is
just
brought
this.
to its knees because of like, and it's this isn't like this is like photorealistic game. There are games out there that look better than this that run smoother.
Yeah.
This it is crazy that what this is doing to graphics cards out there.
Yeah, it almost seems like we're all playing on a computer that's not really supposed to run this, or like the game that we're playing is not really the finished version. I will say the game.
Well, it's not. I mean,
the game reminds me a lot.
Par for the course for all games
yeah,
today.
That is definitely true. I'm not shooting at CD Projekt Red. I'm not trying to give them anything. This, like he said, it's everyone nowadays that puts out a game. Ever since cartridges went away, and it was like now we can just update virtually on the internet.
Blame it on the cartridge.
Well, I'm just saying the cartridge,
CDs
like you
too.
released that, or even the CDs, you released it. It's released. There is no updating it, and then the internet happened. And it's like, oh well, now we can just update on day one.
They did.
So.
There are cartridges that they release new versions to fix bugs.
Okay, well it happened. Yeah, and that's fine.
But it was rare.
But yeah, it's a lot different.
And it is completely different though. I mean, I'm nitpicking.
You know, now with that kind of mentality where I can just release a day one patch and fix the issues potentially, it does take away from games really being released, and that's always the big argument about pre-releases. Like, should you pre-order something versus not, because you're enabling those companies to do this. Yeah, I know that. I wanted to support them anyway. I do want to play the game. Overall, I've had a good time with it. It's not that crazy.
Well, there was no way that the three of us were not going to buy this game. You know me. I'm a big advocate of not pre-ordering.
Yeah, and you didn't have to.
You'll go and listen to the reviews and then make a decision on that. But and then I pre-ordered, and you sat there and you were like, "Burn the witch!"
Yeah. And our personal like messages on Discord, we had like a little chat. And
I was like, okay, like if you know 100%, no matter what, regardless of what anything says, whatever you hear that you're going to buy this game and play it anyway, then yeah, go ahead and pre-order. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just for the most part, most of the time you should not pre-order. You should be waiting a second, and you don't have to be the first to play. Like in most games, it's not going to change your play experience, especially a non-multiplayer game like this.
So
it's not going to change your game experience.
The game that this reminds me of, and I don't want to curse it this way, but I am.
GTA.
Not GTA. It has nothing to do with GTA. It doesn't remind me of GTA at all. What it does remind me of is Anthem. The initial, when we had the beta release for Anthem, we played that, and then I know we got the game when it was technically released. There was the market, and that was the biggest thing. The flying around the world had no problem with. It was more of the market stuff, where it was
beautiful.
super, like, optimization in the market was bad, and like people would kind of phase in and out, and not really. It just was really odd. And that's the kind of stuff that I'm seeing in this game, like especially being out on the street, which I said I haven't really done a whole lot of. But some of the stuff that I'm seeing reminds me of the way that the movement is, like the optimizations is kind of just not 100% there. That's kind of what it reminds me of. And I hate to say that because obviously we know Anthem is going nowhere. It's completely dead and will never be a good game at this point, which sucks. But I did have enjoyment with it.
Don't say it'll never be a good game.
I
likely won't.
Well, I mean, there's no developers. It's basically gone at this point.
Anthem had a lot of problems, and some of it was technical. A lot of it was story. And the jury's still out on the story for Cyberpunk 2077. So far, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
But again, I'm still not even at the title card.
Yeah. Well, like I said, when I say that, it's more of the certain parts of the game. Like, I'm not comparing this game to be an Anthem. Like, this game is way better than Anthem.
Right.
On that sense, but it's the little things that I'm seeing, the optimizations
parts.
of it. That's really what's
the release and technical issue parts.
Yeah. So another bug that people had actually reported, and it's funny because I actually experienced this today. Like I played about 2 hours today.
Dicks.
And dicks. And I saw this article get posted in our like little newsroom that we have, and I was like, oh, that's super funny because I just had that happen. And so what's happening is when you're in your inventory and you get to switch out different clothing, depending on the character that you have. Like my character is a man, so he has a penis. Right, and that's what it is. And he basically, as I switch pants,
because he can have a vagina.
Yeah, he could.
We've already covered this. He could have a vagina,
or he could have none. He could just be a Barbie and have nothing. But as you switch pants, I would switch pants, and instead of just like being in your underwear or whatever, or pants just going to a different type of pants, there's like a blend session where it blends like whatever you had to the next thing. Well, as I did that, I went to like a Barbie for a half a second, and then I would see the pants on there, and then I was like, that's odd. So I did it again, and then I would see my big floppy dick just like flopping around, and then it would be like covered up by the pants real quick. So I'm like, are you fucking kidding? So I kept doing it, and I'm like, yeah, this is totally happening. Like this is actually a thing. And then obviously we have an article about it that people are also experiencing this, which is just completely random, but like even that is like
not just experiencing it where they're going back and forth, but literally that they have the pants on and they've changed to another new pair of pants and their penis is showing through the pants.
Oh, I haven't seen that then. That's not what I saw then. But yeah, I was seeing just like in between.
Yeah, it is completely clipping, and apparently this is not just for the men. The breasts of women are actually clipping through certain shirts as well.
So, like I said, the things that I've experienced are not affecting my gameplay in any sense. I mean, there's just different things that obviously this stuff will get fixed, or if it doesn't, I don't even care because that doesn't bother me. Like me seeing the penis for half a second is not a big deal for me. It's not going to make me stop playing the game or anything.
And again, it's first person, so this is only when you're on the character screen when you're like swapping out what you're wearing.
Oh, and
so
one thing
it's vast minority of the game.
One thing that I did note though is so they make a big deal about it, being able to pick your genitalia and all that. So I went to the apartment that you have that you start the game with, like V's apartment, and I went to the shower, and you can turn the shower on, and I look down, and if you're in the game and you're walking around, you look down, you can see your pants, you can see your feet, your shoes or whatever. But in the shower, when you look down, you don't see anything. You don't see any legs. You don't see any feet. You just are looking at the ground. And I thought that was interesting because I'm like, they make a big point of having this as a thing, but in the shower, you can't see it. So I'm like, well, that's stupid, but whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not against it either.
Yeah.
I get it.
I
get showing it because, I mean, I haven't gotten to the point where I have any romances or sex scenes, but my understanding is they don't show anything for that either. That pretty much the only time that you see your genitalia is during the character select screen, which kind of like
why
begs the question: why do you even see it then either?
Yeah,
but
so those are probably the majority of the bugs and things that we've heard that are obviously people are covering and people are submitting because like, these are like major issues for them. For mine is the key binding, which I found out last night. There was someone that obviously there was 2 posts on Reddit that had people having the same experience, and not just because of the way that I play my key mapping, but like they just want to be able to map the keys differently because pressing F isn't that convenient sometimes, or pressing I isn't convenient.
Yes.
And so they were able to go into the INI file, the config file that's on your PC, and you can actually change that.
Oh, God.
Which typically, one thing on those is it says like a IN underscore F, right, for the F key. Well, the thing is with those are typically set up by a certain like key, like a master key that they have for the keyboard, so it's very unique on what the keys translate to. So for example, an F may not be F, it may be IN underscore Z. That stands for the F key, and they do this weird mapping, but sometimes, usually it's like F is F and G is G. But when it comes to random keys like what I'm trying to use, I have no idea what the key would be because there's no way to look it up.
Yeah, like page up, page
like
down,
how would I know what page up, page down is?
Man, delete.
And so I have to look through the INI file and see if there's maybe another, that button's maybe referenced somewhere else, and then I try to use it and save it, and it's just a mess. But that is something that I could do to get around this. Ultimately, what I did was just pick up the actual keyboard or pick up the controller for some of it today. So we'll kind of get into now with the differences in the platforms. As we've said, all three of us have played on PC. We've all played on PC. All of us have either a 2060 or higher, I would say, or usually the 1070 for you. But yeah, it's we're playing on fairly decent computers, and we're still getting pretty low optimization.
So, to be clear, this game is released on 3 platforms: PC, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. The PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series versions aren't released yet. They're not out there yet. So if you're playing on console, it is a PlayStation 4 or Xbox One version of the game. And interestingly enough, or at least logically enough, based off of the extreme performance issues that it has with the PC, it's not running all that great on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, especially if you have the original versions and not the half-step consoles like the Xbox One X or the PlayStation 4 Pro. So this guy, among other people, he did this great Twitter video showing the original E3 2018 gameplay trailer.
Which looks like this on my PC, also.
It does look like this on PC. And then PlayStation 4.
I thought this was Vice City.
It looks like Vice City on a PlayStation 2.
Yeah, it looks like PS2 graphics.
It's not just less people, it's just flat colors. The texture pop in here on the guard, on the security guard here, or police officer, is amazingly bad. Takes like 20 seconds for the textures to pop in on his, patch on the side of his jacket and the textures on his face. This is horrible.
Yeah, this is really bad. Really, really bad. So it kind of begs the question of no wonder they said that...
do the texture pop in again.
No wonder they said that, hey, if you buy it on PS4 or PS4 or Xbox One, we'll give you a free upgrade on the new console if you buy it.
Yeah, they better, because holy Christmas, that is bad.
Yeah, it's not. That is just unacceptable, honestly. I mean, and we haven't even covered.
And it was built for those consoles. This is not a game that was built for the new consoles.
Right. I mean, this game has been in the making for 8 years now, so it's not something that this is, this was PS5 wasn't around, the technology wasn't released yet. It wasn't like something new. But yeah, ultimately we hadn't even gotten to the point, and I don't really want to cover that because it's just whatever. I mean, ultimately they've had 8 years to make the game. They've promised us a lot. They've told us a lot of things, and they even pushed the game out 4 times, and we're still seeing this amount of bugs, this amount of things on day one. And it is unacceptable. It really is. But like I said, I personally
would rather this be like Halo and push to next year.
Yeah, I personally haven't really seen a lot of issues, but I know, speaking to like Brian or even Bruno on his, they're definitely seeing different, because we're all playing different life paths too. So it almost seems like, depending on the life path, maybe they took a little more time. Maybe the Corpo was the first one they thought of doing, and they really fleshed it out. And they were like, well, let's add a couple more. And maybe they added in the Street Kid or the Nomad, and then it was like, oh, we haven't really finished that yet. So.
Well, so there's a couple of things going on here, and I'll talk about Bruno's experience because he shared it with us. And I'll go through it quickly because I'm sure he'll want to share it with greater detail later. One, I think some of the things that they're doing, because, let me talk about Bruno's experience first, and that'll make more sense. Quickly, he said on the Street Kid life path, not just him, he's seen other people have the same issue, that when you get to the part of the story where you're introduced to Night City and you're about to hit the montage, well, you get arrested by the cops because you were asked to steal a car. You get arrested by the cops. And this is supposed to happen. And you go through this montage, how you have, gotten better since then. And that whole moment, he goes to steal the car and the cop cars phase in through the wall. They just clip and slide in. And then the cops slide out through the doors before they open and just glide over to you. And this is happening to multiple people.
Right.
Now, let's be fair. For an open world type game of this, and yes, I've said GTA, but let's bring out their Assassin's Creed, because that's similar in many ways. You got some of the Watch Dogs as well. Trying to script events in an open world like that, it's difficult. It's not easy. You build this open world so that everything is just kind of ticking along, and then you're trying to script this thing and not let the player do certain things. There was a moment in mine where I had to go into this room, but the guy was talking to me, and if I moved forward, he would push me back. And it was because they wanted to make sure the player didn't move forward until a certain time. So scripting these things in an open world game, not easy. So that makes sense. There's actually a theory floating out there because the understanding is that multiplayer will be coming. And the theory is that
I thought they weren't going to do that.
That was the first thing. And then it started coming out that they are thinking about doing multiplayer. And then the theory came out is with this scripting and all this stuff that they've put in for these life paths and everything else, is that they're going to try to do a multiplayer. You're going to hate me for this, Xycia. Like GTA 5 Online or like Red Dead Redemption Online. I told you.
Maybe they'll fix the game first.
No one sees he's shaking his head.
Maybe they'll fix the game first.
Maybe they'll fix... No, I'm sure they will. A lot of this stuff is going to be fixable. Even some of the performance stuff that we talk about is going to be fixable. And even some of the stuff that we're also going to talk about, which is we're going to dive a little bit more here into the difference between using mouse and keyboard versus controller, especially since I was using that on the PC. Now, aiming with a controller on the PC was not
horrendous.
Good. Now, you brought up Anthem. Anthem is a fantastic example here. Because Anthem, if you used a controller, it gave a slight little aim assist. In fact, Destiny does this as well. Yeah. There's a little bit of aim assist that is done for when you use a controller versus when you're using a mouse. And the aim assist comes in several different ways. There's some fascinating Destiny videos out there that go over this. Some of it is like the magnetism, like if you get close that it snaps on. Some of it is the stickiness that even if you're trying to push past it, it kind of stays there on the target before it goes past it. There's great game design, fascinating things on how they do the difference between mouse and keyboard because the mouse is going to be more precise. They have none of that in this game whatsoever.
So
I had a shotgun and a person right in front of me and could not hit this guy as he sidestepped out of the way because I just couldn't react fast enough.
So there are options for aim assist. There are options in the menu for aim assist. I turned them off because I was using with a mouse. But I used the keyboard.
In theory, they're on by default.
Right, and then I used the controller afterwards, and yeah, I couldn't.
They're not very good.
I couldn't hit anything. I mean, it was just bad. I just couldn't hit anything. The only thing it was good for was driving.
Now, some of the reason why the controller was hard to hit with is because I legit think they tried to make it react like a mouse. Like when I move the controller, it starts off slow, but the speed of movement ramps up real fast after that. Yeah. Like there's a moment of slow, and then all of a sudden it whips around. And I think some of it is having to get used to it.
Yeah, and there's also recoil and stuff too for the weapons that if you hold it down and try to just shoot somebody with an automatic, you're not going to hit them. which I'm not saying I was or was not doing during my gameplay some of the fights, but yeah, there's definitely differences. Like, I think right now in the state that the game is in, I do recommend you playing it. So if you are going to play it and you're into this kind of thing, I would probably say using a hybrid method of using keyboard and mouse, if you're on PC at least, keyboard and mouse, and then using controller to drive is probably your best bet, to be quite honest.
Well, and then there's literally menus like the round menu for your weapon select that are near unusable with a mouse.
The mouse is hard
right
with those
controller
menus.
Yeah, because you don't move the mouse in the direction. You literally move it up to move it counterclockwise and down to move it clockwise. And it whips around, and it's hard to get it stopped where you want it to. And even like slow motion, it will pop past it. The controller, you just point in the direction. But then there's other menus where it literally has a cursor on the screen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's easier to navigate some of those other menus with mouse and keyboard. It's so, like, there's literally menus with tabs across the top, and I can just reach up with my mouse and click on the tab instead of doing like left and right bumper. And they even have 1 and 3 to like act as left and right bumper. But yeah, just use the damn mouse, click on the tab. Okay, now click down here and like Dymyrn's playing Cyberpunk 2077 now.
He's trying.
He's trying. He's testing as he's rebuilding his computer. There's like hold it down for a certain amount of time for it to activate, or like disassemble this stuff. And and there's some keyboards that are mouse and keyboard friendly and work so much faster that way than a controller. And there's other one, the controllers work better. It's a I've never in my life more supported the idea that you play a game like Xycia just said, that you play it with both your keyboard and mouse and your controller right in front of you. And to make matters worse, because that's how I was playing it this morning, when your controller times out and goes to sleep and everything stops on the game, it says, your controller just disconnected. Please press enter to continue. I'm like, oh my God.
So before we get into one of we'll leave you with the spoiler on the whole thing to kind of wrap this up. If you are wanting to play this game and you haven't purchased it already, I would think you're probably not going to purchase it after hearing us. I would think if you wanted to purchase a game, you probably already bought it and you're already playing and probably experienced the things that we've already talked about. Ultimately, the game has a good mixture of stealth. Reminds me a lot of like the old Metal Gear series, so Metal Gear Solid mixed with Deus Ex. Mixed with like almost Fifth Element. Deus Ex, sorry. And also Fifth Element, along with like obviously like Blade Runner, like the world is just like that. But it's a lot of like that. The story mode so far has been intriguing, at least the main story quest that I've been doing. And if you can live with some of these, like I said, the bugs and stuff that we're kind of experiencing, I think it's definitely well worth $60, especially knowing CD Projekt Red's going to do a lot of fixing of this stuff. They did the same thing with Witcher 3. It wasn't perfect when it was released. The biggest difference here is CD Projekt Red hyped the shit out of this game along with everybody else, where Witcher 3 wasn't as like end of the world, this is the best game that's ever released. So the things will get fixed. I mean, most of it will get fixed. Hopefully the optimization will get fixed. And they're definitely known for fixing things, so it's not like they're going to just ghost us on this.
Check out YouTube videos of the game if you have not purchased it already to make an informed decision of buying it.
Yeah.
And the other thing, I cannot stress this part enough. Do not base your buying decision on Witcher 3. This is a completely different game in so many different ways. It moves different. It fights different. It's like the tech tree is completely different. And most importantly, the side quests just are not as engaging. There is no Red Baron. From anything that I've heard or seen, this is not just my experience. This is people like playing through it later. There's like the main quest, yes, good. But there's no side quests that have that loving, handcrafted feeling to them as the bloody Baron. I said Red Baron. I know that. The bloody Baron from Witcher 3. They just, the side quests weren't given that much attention. Now, again, like Xycia said, that may be something that's fixed. They may have an update that puts in some cool side quests like that. Who knows?
Yeah. But like I said, ultimately, if you don't have the game already, you're probably waiting anyway. And if you already have the game, it's because you wanted to play this and didn't care, just like us, if it was, terrible or not.
And we still love it.
But I still really enjoy it. Like I said, it's mixing a lot of the same games and genres that are movies that I've liked. And like I said, with the cinematics, with the music and everything, when you're starting to do those quests, like it definitely ramps up with how you're doing things. And then the hacking element of
the music's good.
Yeah, hacking like certain things to sneak by, and it's just really neat. So definitely,
Mike absolutely wanted to postpone Got Our Attention to tomorrow so he could play more of the game today. Well, and we were having some technical difficulties too.
And you guys were off today, and I wasn't, so I only got to play 2 hours extra today. So, but anyway,
he wanted to go play more.
So ultimately, with that, we'll leave you with this. That's our first impressions and our overall stories that we've seen on this topic so far. We'll leave you with one spoiler.
Spoiler.
So this is a spoiler. Fast forward.
Spoiler.
At least a minute or two.
At least 2 minutes. 2 minutes
to cover this. But go ahead.
So if you're still listening, because if you don't want to know this, you need to stop listening now. It leaked out from Cyberpunk 2077 that there is a cameo from a very popular game developer out there. And Mike, you might have already missed this.
Potentially
You've already missed this because during the mission that leads up to the end of the prologue and the title card, the mission called The Heist with Jackie, and you go into a particular hotel in a particular bar. In a section of that bar, you will find lounging on one of the chairs none other than Hideo Kojima.
Guess what? I didn't even go in the bar.
You didn't even go in the bar.
I passed the bar.
The mastermind behind the Metal Gear Solid series,
right?
From Konami, very popular series. He no longer works there, so he can't make Metal Gear anymore.
And
he also made Death Stranding recently.
Also, rumor has it, and this is just a rumor.
Rumor has it.
But there's talks that he may be going back to Konami.
That's not
I heard that from Tickle, our roving reporter.
Nope.
He said he had sources, and I said, okay, I'll take it from that. That is a totally rumor. I didn't bring it up before, but now that we're on Hideo Kojima, that's something to say.
I will put a margarita on.
Okay, for sure. But I definitely did go past the bar, and the reasoning why is because I was on a mission. The mission was to go do a certain thing, and I said we could not. I told the partner in the game, I said, we're not going to sidetrack, our mission because we're going to go hang out at the bar. So I walked past the bar and kept going. So interesting.
So for those that don't know, and for those that might be joining us from the 2-minute skip, that's okay. We're not gonna talk specifically about the spoiler in specifics here. But for those that don't know, this is not like every building is 100% open. You can just walk into it any time and go to all these different places. And no, like most of the buildings are just locked doors. And when you go on certain missions, you might have access to part of that building for that mission, but you don't necessarily have access to that part of the building in future missions. So when we talk about how Mike might have missed that spoiler, he might not be able to go back and see it again unless he starts over the game again.
I don't think I will be able
and to get to that section, you got 2 other life paths to play through because they are different. That is the cool thing.
That's true.
The different life paths, man, the prologues are different. To get to that section, though, he'll have to play 5 to 7 hours before he can get to that. So that's amazing.
So, I know it has to wrap up, but that is our Cyberpunk update of the week. The game is here. Like I said, I'll probably be cutting some other videos for my channel to cover some of the things that I wanted to compare on tabletop and such. And I'm sure Phoenix will probably do some the same. But yeah, so that's that this week. We're going to move into some other things really quickly before our break. So hang tight with us, probably another maybe 10 minutes, and then we'll get to a break here. So in news of our 3090s that we were just kind of talking about, we all know that they've been back.
Oh, and scalpers and everything else.
We know the scalpers.
The whole state of the crap union.
Yeah, everything 3000 series is basically hard to get a hold of. There's no possible way to get one, and it just gets worse and worse. Well, now it's gotten even worse, and it's just like 2020 all over again, right? So the report was that MSI, one of the factories that makes the RTX 3090s, had $300,000 worth of RTXs stolen from their factory. They just fell out of a truck, right? No, they were apparently
not street value, retail value.
Yeah, which are valued at like 336,000.
3 to 4 times over retail.
Yeah, so that's a huge hit on the 3000 series again. Obviously, we'll probably never see those, or if we will, we'll probably be on eBay where you're going to pay like 4 times the amount of that. So if you do see someone on the street and they're selling you a 3090.
That's $1 million profit that they get from that one heist.
Yeah. So speaking of GTA and other things related. So
yeah, right. So yeah, the whole concept too is, is there anything that can be done with these scalpers? You're talking about that for not just the RTX series, not like we're going to see scalpers, I'm pretty sure, for the Ryzen processors too, because those are selling out instantly. And, you also got it for the PlayStation 5 and Xbox X and Series S. And we talked about last week, Phil Spencer was talking about, well, what about a deposit system? And there's still concepts of how to bots, exploit that. And a lot of people are like, well, it seems like a new issue. It's not as new as we think, because these bots that the scalpers use, they're not that new. I mean, they've been reprogrammed for the different stores that are selling them and everything, but these bots have been in use before, specifically for, those sneaker freaks that are out there. He's like looking down as I'm holding up the shoe. Yeah. So yeah, those sneaker freaks out there, that the bots were a problem with them. So people are starting to look at what is being done to combat the bots there to, bring those same ideas into the console side as well. And for the NVIDIA 30 series as well. So they're kind of looking into it. There's not a lot to report right now at this point, other than they're, like on top of what Phil Spencer's saying, that with the deposit system, that, they're looking at these ideas, and there might be something that's coming about from this, hopefully in the nearest future, that will help.
Yep.
So we'll see.
So this week on social justice, we have a story coming from Taiwan.
Sweet revenge.
For
social justice.
Yeah. So a man, he tried to pull a fast one on his wife. And if you've ever been married, or if you are married, or even if you've just dated someone, usually it's not good to keep things from your your SO. In this case, the gentleman bought a PS5, and he found that it looks similar to an air cleaner that you can plug into the wall. It's very similar to that.
Oh my God.
So he ordered a PS5,
very similar,
comes in, and he tells his wife, oh, it's just an air filter. It's an air purifier. It's totally not a PS5.
I mean, look at these pictures. They look near identical.
I mean, they do. They kind of do, yeah. It's just one's a lot larger than the other.
Thinner for the air purifier.
Yeah.
But,
so obviously,
that's a Roomba next to that.
Yeah,
thing.
Yeah, it's huge.
That thing's like 3 feet tall.
So obviously that didn't work. His wife did find out, and the reason the story came about was that a gentleman was on a website trying to buy a PlayStation 5, and saw that this one had been posted that was apparently used but brand new kind of thing, or whatever. But it was a low price tag for a brand new device. He was like, "There's no way. This is weird." But he said the lady was eager to sell it, so he decided to meet up with them. And as he got there was a man that he started chatting with, and he said that basically he was the original purchaser, and he said, you know, he had bought it from a website, whatever. And he said, that's weird. He's like, well, did you buy 2 of these? Like, why are you selling this one? And he goes, no. He said it took a moment of silence, and he said, my wife wants to sell it. And he says, it turns out that women can tell the difference between a PS5 and an air filter. So
do not try to pull a fast one to your wife.
And with that, we'll leave you for just a minute. We're going to take a minute for our short break and our ad from our sponsors. And we're back. So, obviously, you know, we always do what we've been playing for the week, and that doesn't change. This week, we know what we definitely have been playing, which has been Cyberpunk 2077. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. No, I'm not. We've already covered that. If you want to hear about that, rewind it, and you'll see at the beginning of the podcast what we think and what we've been playing. I did happen to play something else this week, though, which is kind of a guilty pleasure of mine. With my wife, we like to watch a lot of those remake shows where they go into a house and they remodel, like they bust walls down, and a lot of it's just trash TV, like just watching drama or whatever, but a lot of it's like watching house because everybody wants to, you know, model their house and do different things. And I came across on Steam, it was suggested to me. I've been playing a lot of Cities. Actually, City Skylines, another one I've been playing a lot of. City Skylines is a city planning type of game, kind of like related to like SimCity, like the old SimCity kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been doing that, and this game came up because it said, hey, you'd like this game, so why don't you check out House Flippers? And I was like, what the hell is this? This is really a game like this. And it's like, yep, you go into a house, you can get a sledgehammer, you can bust down walls, you can do all of the things that you want to do, put in appliances, paint the walls, clean houses, and all kinds of crazy shit that you can do as like a house person, like a house flipper. And you make money, you try to fix them up and sell them to the bidders online, like on the game online, and make money. So I've been playing that. I've actually, it's almost therapeutic in ways. Like my wife actually started playing it, and she's actually really enjoying it too. Just because it's in the sense of like, if you ever played Visceral Cleanup Crew, I think it is, something like that. Similar to that, where you're cleaning.
Oh yeah.
And so you're cleaning, so there's dirty things, there's these different things.
The sci-fi space one.
Yeah. So in that game,
basically the janitor comes up and cleans up behind the people that get killed by all the aliens.
Exactly. So you're cleaning in this game, so it gives you the satisfaction when you finish things that it looks clean, and then you can paint walls, so it's kind of nice and calming. There's nice music. And then ultimately you get to flip the house. So it's pretty neat. I enjoyed it. It's like $19.99 on Steam right now. So check it out. I would definitely suggest it. There's also a Cyberpunk DLC for it that's free that I may be downloading.
I'll have to send you a link of a game journalist's favorite games for the end of the year that she liked, because she also liked House Flipper, so that you can share that to your wife and maybe find some other good ones in there.
Cool.
One of the things that we, Dymyrn and myself, Bruno and myself, played, and my wife actually got a subscription to this again. First time in like 4 years that both of us had a subscription to World of Warcraft. And we're going to have a little bit of story about it later on, but you know, we've been playing a little bit of that as well. And before we get into the short attention news, I did want to talk about some not game news that we kind of accidentally, we were going to talk about this before the break. This is actually a good time for it anyway, because, you know, the break's supposed to be more midway, and boy, was it not midway this time. But Pepsi is looking about redesigning and kind of reimagining the idea of their 2-liter bottles, and probably the first redesign of the 2-liter bottle in 30 years. I think 30 years is probably like, man, I think it's more like 40 years. I don't think the 2-liter bottles changed since the 1980s.
Yeah, I mean, they've pretty much been the same. They have a slight, like Coke has their own slight difference, like with the Fanta series and stuff, but it's pretty much the same.
Yeah, they're a cylinder that holds 2 liters of soda, and it's got like the nubs on the bottom so it can stand up. I mean, like, you know, and structural integrity. So because of the hashtag Rona economy and everybody working at home, no, literally that is related. What they did is they had talked to a couple of different designers working from home about changing not only the look, but, like building in some more functionality. And so they did that. They were able to design it in VR from home, kind of test it with people in VR from home, and even 3D print out like, early concepts on it. And so these designs, okay, I'm going to start off. They look fantastic.
They look like they've got this Nerf like football with the tail.
They look a little bit, yes, they look like a Nerf football because they've got that little squeezed in part right before like the fins / the nubs that the 2-liter standing on. Now their concept is that squeezed in area is supposed to be the area where you grip it and pour. Now, I don't know about you. I don't grip that low for pouring. That seems too front heavy for when I'm pouring. Whether I'm doing a 2-liter of that or a 1.75 liter of my rum.
Yeah.
I'm gripping midway or up towards the spout of it a little bit more. I think that's a little bit low, but still it does look pretty striking. And, granted, that wasn't the first concept. They had a couple of different ideas that they went through before they reached that. But
this sounds like busy work. This sounds like, hey, you guys are working from home. We need you guys to do something. Reimagine the 2-liter bottle.
That one looks like a dildo. To the left.
Yeah, it looks like a fleshlight on the left too.
Also, spoilers. Skip ahead 30 seconds if you don't want spoilers. But apparently, Cyberpunk 2077 is super horny and there's dildos all over the fucking place. Just wait until you see the cock and balls.
Yeah, I've already seen one.
Oh, yeah. There's apparently a lot. Okay. Anyway, with that, I'll hand it back over to Mike.
All right, cool.
For our next segment.
Let's get into our shorts. They should be fairly short today. So
I'd like to get into... Wait, no.
Oh, man. So we've talked about Twitch and their DMCA issues. They released some talks recently that they're working with their association for the national music publishers to have an integrated feature with Twitch that will instantly take down a channel whenever they have a copyright infringement during a live stream. So instead of just having a DCMA or a DMCA warning on the video and muting the audio, they would just immediately take down the stream, which is pretty bad, being that we have a highlight video of using their product for music that is flagged and still on our page as a highlight that is flagged for DMCA. Crazy. We'll see how that works. Alongside
using their soundstage.
Yeah. Alongside that, obviously we've been in a corona economy that we're trying to try to get another stimulus passed.
Hashtag Rona economy.
Trying to get another stimulus passed to try to get some help to the people in America that need the help. And as usual, they're trying to slide in some other things that, during this time, because they have to get this passed, they're trying to slide in some other things, which once again, not only this, but other things, but they're trying to slide in another law that would basically turn any unauthorized commercial streaming of copyrighted material, like an album on YouTube, video on Twitch, or whatever, even on Instagram, like a story on Instagram, into a felony offense with possible prison sentence rather than a misdemeanor. That's what they're trying to slide into the bill, which is completely ridiculous. That they're literally we would get a felony charge because we played music that that's just fucking crazy.
No, what makes it true bullshit? I understand that people can't get it through their thick skulls that you can't just play a soundtrack of something while you're streaming. You can't do that shit. You can't be playing your favorite Def Leppard album or Eminem or Refuse or whatever while you're playing a game. You can't do that. People still want to do it, no, you can't do that. And yeah, something should be done about that. But oh my God, there's DMCA strikes because you're just playing a game and the soundtrack of the game is getting DMCA tracked. And you're not choosing to play that music. That's the music of the game. So that's where this all falls apart. Yeah. And the problem is that the people who are going to talk about this law, whether passing it or not passing it, don't even know that basic thing. That there's a whole chunk of this that is, I have gotten a DMCA strike on my YouTube channel because I was playing One Finger Death Punch that had custom electronic music in it.
Yep. So it's pretty crazy.
And the owner of that music submitted his music for DMCA takedowns. So you can't even play that game on a stream. So that's stupid.
Yep.
Moving on to not so stupid, moving on to something that we actually alluded to earlier when we were talking about we could wait a week hashtag for Cyberpunk 2077 was that sometimes you just have to delay a game. And sometimes you need to delay, we were put in a bad situation, all of us, where all of work was getting delayed by the hashtag Rona economy. And same with Microsoft. And they took the ballsy move of taking their premier launch title of Halo Infinite and saying, nope, we're not going to launch that with the new console this year. Halo Infinite is going to slip to next year. So while that was the news previously, now it looks like that they have come back and said, okay, it looks like the launch window for Halo Infinite is not going to be spring or summer of 2021, but it's going to be fall of 2021.
Wow. So in other news, Sony's Funimation, if you're familiar with any of the Dragon Ball Z series, Attack on Titan, or any of those type of, even My Hero Academia, Yu Yu Hakusho, whatever, any kind of good anime that you've probably watched is made most likely probably by Funimation, along with the voice actors that work from them. And Sony's Funimation has actually has now acquired Crunchyroll, which is a site that has a bunch of different animes that are on them that you can stream and everything like that. They acquired them for $1.175 billion. So Crunchyroll, if you have any stock in Crunchyroll, probably a great time to hold on to those or maybe cash out depending on what kind of deal you got. But yeah, so ultimately now Funimation owns Crunchyroll. So I'm probably thinking that Crunchyroll will probably have some of Funimation things on there because Funimation had their own site and their own kind of streaming, but it wasn't very great. So this will probably allow them to get their actual shows onto an easier streaming platform.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's going to be nice for Crunchyroll because they might have better access to those particular anime titles, which Crunchyroll may not have had. The whole Sony Spider-Man, you can't have it on your platform bullshit. I believe some of that may have been happening as well, too. Being a person who has watched Dragon Ball Z and not associated in his mind with Funimation, which I should have, but it'll be good to be able to, I'll bet you there'll be easier access to those on Crunchyroll going forward. So I'm excited for that. That sounds pretty interesting. Something else that I've been excited for, my wife as well, which is World of Warcraft. And we are not alone. World of Warcraft, the most recent expansion of this 15-year-old plus game, ends up being the fastest selling game. The expansion is the fastest selling PC game of all time. 3.7 million copies worldwide in the game's first full day of availability. I can't tell if that's counting pre-orders or not as the first day. But even if it is, the last record was actually 3.5 million for the previous record holder of Blizzard's own Diablo 3. But certainly WoW is still going strong. Also, the whole concept of, we are a fan of this, of course, the Xbox Game Pass. Even Xycia is a fan of this, and he's a PC Master Race and doesn't have the consoles. Yep. He himself has Xbox Game Pass. There is a further divide. I thought most Xbox Game Pass was pretty much the same, and Ultimate was like, oh, it included PC. You could get PC only, or you could get console, or you could get Ultimate. No, there's a further divide in there where, of course, Ultimate includes Xbox Gold, which allows some of the multiplayer along with the free games for Gold that you get on the Xbox consoles. But apparently that if you have regular Xbox Game Pass versus Xbox Game Pass Ultimate versus not having it, will depend on how you get the Gears 5 DLC that's coming out. If you have Ultimate, it is free. If you do not have either, it is $20. If you have just regular Xbox Game Pass, it will be $10.
Oh, interesting.
So it's further division between these different Game Pass tiers that I just was not even aware of.
Yeah. So if you're into any kind of video on Twitch streaming or even in photography, there's a thing called HDR, which is high dynamic range, which allows you to bring more vibrance and more different color ranges to your either pictures or video. And one thing that was announced this week was that YouTube is now supporting HDR for live streams. So obviously you have to have the right equipment. You got to have the right either DSLRs or nice cameras and nice setups for this, for that to happen, along with the capture cards and things that can actually accept it. But they're actually one of the first to do this, and they're kind of in the stream war with Twitch. Like, Twitch is the other large streaming platform, which YouTube has got obviously their own market of YouTubing, like the videos you can watch. But the eye is right now is that they have the HDR ability, and that's one of the most high def video quality you can have. So they're in the market for that, and they're now leading. So IGN reported this one. It's so the movie Monster Hunter that's coming out, or I think it may be already released. I don't even know if it's released yet. I believe it stars I can't remember her name. Mila Jovovich. Yeah.
Mila Jovovich.
Yeah, she basically any kind of Resident Evil movie, right? Whatever. She's like in these movies now, right? So they actually pulled the movie in Chinese theaters, and it was because of an offensive joke. Which, isn't the greatest thing to have, but there was a scene where there's two soldiers talking to each other, and one soldier asks, "What are my knees?" And then the following says, "Chinese." And it's basically, it echoes a long time racist playground chant, which, Chinese, Japanese, dirty knees, look at these. And because of that, they said, we're not playing this movie, so they pulled it. Since then, they actually came out and made a huge apology and said, I'm absolutely devastated that a line from our movie has offended some audience members in China. They apologize. I mean, obviously a big, long disclaimer, or long paragraph of them being sorry. But yeah, I mean, a lot of those things like that are old things that we've carried over in our traditions and just think people have just said and not really realized that they are hurtful. And it is things that it's very slanderous, and it's very disrespectful and very discriminating. And, people just need to be aware of that kind of stuff going forward.
Yeah, I'm very happy that they are taking action on that and taking quick action on that. Because it's it has connotations of just someone not being equal. So, and I think you and I were even having the discussion with how you sit cross-legged and how that had changed throughout the years to where it's now crisscross applesauce.
Right.
Is the more PC way to say it nowadays. And, as silly as I think that, rhyme and alliteration is there, still, I mean, it's a lot better than trying to attribute something to a racial, stereotype. So, hey, I support it. I think it's great. Me, I'm very much, especially even with, even in my own family, support racial diversity.
Yep.
But then racial diversity goes even further when you're talking about the human race and other alien races. And I'm not talking about aliens like some of our political leaders think of aliens. I'm talking about actual aliens from like people outside of the planet Earth. Because according to a former Israeli space security chief, Haim Eshed, the United States and Israeli governments have been and are in contact with the Galactic Federation of Aliens. That is word from this IGN article as a quote from it. Apparently, this gentleman who has been, this isn't just like a crackpot. This guy served as chief of the Israeli space security program for 30 years. Says that not only are we in contact with this Federation of Aliens that have stopped several nuclear apocalypses, but that we have a base with them on Mars already.
Sure.
Now, it's unclear whether he has any proof on this, but oh my God, he has a book you can buy to read more about, of course.
Oh man. So we kind of talked about Anthem earlier, and the studio behind Anthem was BioWare. So announced earlier this week, BioWare veterans Casey Hudson and Mark Dura have left the studio. So the project director, Casey Hudson, worked for Mass Effect and was also the studio general manager. They departed after 23 years of working with the company, along with Dragon Age executive producer Mark Dara as well. They insist, obviously, BioWare is going to continue on, and it has no actual impact to any of the games coming up, so forth, so on. And obviously, after seeing things like Anthem come out and also Mass Effect, the latest Mass Effect that was also not very up there on most people's charts, we'll just have to see how this actually keeps turning out, because right now BioWare has been not in a good place for a long time, and it just seems like it's getting worse.
Sure. And, there's been a lot of, that's a common thing where, people leaving studios and moving to other studios and stuff like that. So I'm curious to see how much this will actually do anything, but yeah, we'll see. Lastly, from Engadget, they talk about Razer's Tomahawk. Interesting that they use Tomahawk because MSI uses Tomahawk for their motherboards. But Razer's Tomahawk modular gaming PC now available for $2,400. Now, the reason why this caught my attention is pretty much most PCs are modular already. And you can swap out different devices on them. But this goes a little bit further. This is an extremely small form factor. In fact, this PC looks like it's about the same size as an Xbox Series X.
Yeah.
It's square like it. It doesn't look like it's too much larger. It is based off of Intel's NUC 9 or Nuke 9 Extreme Compute Element card, which is basically a system on a card where it's got the CPU and the memory and, like what you consider the motherboard on a card that hooks into a backplane, and then you plug everything else in the backplane. That is meant to be extremely small form factor so that you can fit it in an entertainment center. And what's modular on it, of course, is being able to, plug in different video cards. Granted, the smaller of the video cards, you can't put the bigger ones in there. Along with that, that system on a card, along with other things. It is a Core i9 9980HK processor. So that is, the previous generation, about to be 2 previous generations coming up here soon. 16 gig of RAM, that's pretty good. 512 SSD, all on that card. And then supplemented by another 2 terabyte hard drive so they can, fit a bigger hard drive in there in addition. And, GeForce RTX 3080. So yeah, you can buy this for $2,400 and you too can run Cyberpunk 2077 at 23 frames per second.
You too can also get ripped off. It's great. All right, so that's enough with our shorts. We don't have any emails today. If you want to, send us an email. Do it. It's really easy. Just send us anything. Tell us a joke. I don't care. Do something. I want to have something to read here, so just say something.
We actually had an email last week.
Yeah, last week was great.
Not this week.
But email is GOA@sassgaming, so GOA@SASSgaming.com. For give you your chance to read it out loud live on the podcast. So make sure to send that in. We'd love to hear from anything, even if you have articles you want to send it to us. So that's what got our attention this week, obviously outside of Cyberpunk 2077 in our fashion update from Night City. So that was also great. If you're listening to the podcast, I would recommend check this video out on YouTube once we publish it, because there's a little surprise element at the beginning from Brian here. But if you're listening to the podcast, you can always check us out on Twitch on Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Central Time, or Eastern Standard Time, not Central Time, Eastern Standard Time, and on our Twitch channel at Sass Gamers. And like I said, on YouTube afterwards, on your podcast sites that you're probably listening to this on. And if you want to follow me, I'm Xycia, Xycia. You can find me on Twitch, Xycia, or Twitter and Instagram at Xycia Gaming. Also, Dymyrn, who's not here today, you can find his information. Twitch is DYMYRN for Dymyrn, and then also on Twitter is add gaming to that, and then you'll find him as well. Brian, you want to tell us about your stuff?
Yeah, you can find me at Phoennix Nova, PHOENNIX, double N there, _ Nova on Twitch. Get rid of the _ for Twitter. YouTube, you'll have to hunt around, but eventually you'll find me. You can find links on my Twitter account for that.
Sweet. Well, until next week, we're going to try to get some sleep in between the times that we're going to be spending copious hours of playing Cyberpunk 2077. We'll have some new updates for you next week. We'll have you hopefully some new videos cut so we can cover some of those things separately. But until then, be safe, wear a mask, and have a great day. Take care. See you guys next week.